Good morning. Today I want to talk about intrusive thoughts. Intrusive thoughts have been one of the biggest parts of my life, but I've never even mentioned it to anyone IRL, and I've only mentioned it a couple of times passing to people online, but I've never talked about it in detail. So today I wanted to just say everything about this topic that I am aware of. I'll start from the beginning. Unfortunately, I don't remember much from the early days. Now, oh geez, the sun is suddenly extremely bright. I've struggled with intrusive thoughts ever since I was a child, but I can't remember exactly what age. If I had to guess, I would say probably around 5 or 6. And I don't remember exactly what the frequency was, or how many different types there were, or really how it made me feel. I just remember what the main ones were. So, one thing I remember is that whenever I would be in the car with my parents, I went past a block of flats. Something in me would say, you have to count all the windows. And it was very confusing because I knew I was not hearing a voice that was external to my head, but rather that it was a thought that I had formulated myself. But I had no control over the creation of that thought. And the thought would go as such: you have to count every window, and if you don't do it, or if you get the count wrong, the world is going to end, or your dad is going to crash the car and we're all going to die, or that you will have this punishment after death, or you will not have this reward that you would have had after death. So I would try to count the windows as fast as possible, and I would think to myself, well, obviously this is nonsense, but it's a pretty strange thing. It's a pretty strange thing that this thought suddenly appeared in my head without any without me intending to. So now that strange things are already happening, maybe it's not that far-fetched to go an extra step and say, this is actually real. It's pretty far-fetched. It's like 99% ridiculous. But if there's just that 1% chance that something supernatural is happening, well then, it's obviously worth it to just count windows. It's not a big deal. And if I ever was not able to count the windows in time because the car had already passed and the building was now out of sight, you would think, oh, well, if you don't have these kind of thoughts, you would think, oh, well, that means and because nothing happened, well, obviously you can't believe this anymore. But no, there would always be some excuse. There would be some thought in my head that would say, well, I forgive you this time, but not next time. Or something like, actually, this one was a joke. Or something like, yes, you messed up, so now something is going to happen, but it's not going to happen now. it's going to happen in 5 years. And in the next 5 years, I would have so many different intrusive thoughts that I would forget that. Well, sorry, I wouldn't forget it across the next 5 years. I would forget it in the next 5 minutes. Because in the next 5 minutes, we would have some other thing of this nature that would cancel the last one out. And this is the one I remember most vividly because it would happen, I think, pretty much every time I got in the car. And I don't really remember many other types of thoughts of this nature, but I'm sure I did, or I'm confident that there were lots of other thoughts of this kind. But I think overall, it was not that distressing as a child. Now, when it started to get bad was when I was around 10. Many different things happened. One thing was that I started to strongly consider the idea that the voice or the thought that would appear independently in my head or without my control in my head was actually is some kind of demon, or that it was God, and that a lot depended on me fulfilling these twitches or these commands. The sun went away from a moment, but then it came back. That a lot was riding on me fulfilling these commands, and this started to also get mixed up with feelings of suicidality. But I don't actually remember all the details. I just remember that I started giving more form to where these thoughts were coming from. Also, the frequency started increasing a lot, and it increased very fast to the point where these kinds of thoughts were constant all day, and it made it impossible to sleep at night, and it really made it impossible to pay attention to anything because I was constantly having these types of thoughts, and the types of thoughts increased a lot, and the darkness of the thoughts increased massively. So what started happening is I started having the punishment stopped being this promise that something bad would happen, which would never actually happen, and it started being something real. So what would happen is I'd have a thought that said, you have to touch all these objects in this sequence, or you, for example, first touch your bedside table with your left hand, then spin around and touch the cupboard with your right hand, then touch the cupboard with both hands, then touch the bedside table with both hands, or whatever, and and continue and so on, and just touching different things with different parts of my body. Or if there was ever any accidental touch, like walking along the hallway and my shoulder brushes against the wall, well then it's okay, now you got to brush your shoulder with the other wall, now you got to brush the shoulder with both, now you got to do it with both shoulders, and things like that. These constant spontaneous rituals all throughout the day. Every time I'm sitting down or walking around, there's this constantly commands coming into my head to touch things in certain orders. And the punishment, if I was not able to do it, would be where you're going to have this image in your mind, and it would be a very disturbing image. The kinds of images would be, well, it could be very scatological things, or it could be sexual things, or it could be violent things. And if there were a, or a sexual nature, well, it would normally be of it would normally be of a family member, and maybe not a living one. It would often be of a dead relative. And around the age is when I lost my first relatives that I had known in real life. So that made it no. And the violent thoughts would, of course, always be also of people close. And that's how it was for a time. But also, the rituals at some points started to become less and less important, and I would just have these constant morbid thoughts completely outside of my control, without them being punishments, without me having done anything wrong. So I would be having, I'll be in class, and all I'm thinking about is murdering everyone, and it's not out of anger or anything. It's just completely outside of my control, and comes from no anger. And as I mentioned, the sleeping was the worst part, because at least during the day I could be in this constant daze of messed up thoughts. But it was very frustrating and all, but at the end of the day it's just like, well, whatever. I mean, I'm just in this daze and life doesn't matter that much, and I'll just go through the motions, and at least I could sleep at night. But that was the worst part, when I actually had to lie down and all the sound goes away and I'm just alone with these thoughts and I can't sleep. So I started staying up all night, every night, which was a habit I've had now for, I don't know, like 13 years. And it all started because of these intrusive thoughts. So then I would fall asleep in school every day, which actually made going to school a lot easier, because I was in even more of a daze when I was at school. Then another thing is that when the intrusive thoughts would become stronger, the thoughts would become stronger whenever someone's there and I'm not wearing the mask, which is not technically legal. I'm just going to grab the mask in case they come around here. Well, actually, I could just, if they come around here, I'll just dodge them quickly. I've got this tree here in the middle, so I can go one way if they go the other. Okay. The thoughts would become much stronger whenever I had a strong wish to do something. So, for example, regardless of if it was work or leisure, if I really wanted to watch a film, well, the thoughts would become much, much stronger, until I was so frustrated that no matter what, I was not going to enjoy the film anymore. So therefore, my mind would leave me alone. It's like, okay, now that we have spent an hour doing pointless rituals, after you've spent an hour running up and down the house, uh, touching, opening and closing windows, uh, looking at things from different angles. That was a funny one that doesn't happen much anymore. But I used to have this one all the time where I had to look at things from certain angles. It says go into your room and tilt your head in this direction and look at this object from that angle. Then tilt your head in that direction and look at this object from this angle. Go into every single room and stare at every door. And once I'd been doing this for so long, and I was exhausted, they say, okay, now you can watch film. Or if I wanted to do anything productive, well, the same thing would happen. If I wanted to, though I don't think I actually wanted to do much productive stuff at that age. This is more later. But rarely I wanted to do something productive here and there. And yes, this would definitely happen. That I would have the same amount of intrusive thoughts until so I couldn't concentrate on whatever I was trying to do. If I was trying to do any project, it would be impossible to concentrate. So finally I would stop, and then the intrusive thoughts would calm down. The most intense of all the intrusive thoughts, or not the most intense, but maybe the one that was the only one that was apparent was washing my hands. I had to, even though I would barely ever shower as a teenager, I had to obsessively keep my hands clean, especially if I wanted to do something. So, because the water was cold, and I was washing my hands so many times a day, I really have no idea what the number exactly was, but a lot of times my hands were always covered in cuts because of the cold water, and the cuts would open several times a day. So I would very often have blood dripping from my hands, and my hands would be very, very gross to look at because they were all like white and purple, and when I went to school, people would definitely remark a lot about it. There was this boy who would always tell me that my hands were disgusting, but aside from that, most kids were considerate and didn't mention it, but they really were disgusting. When I was 15, I dropped out of high school, and it started to get a bit better. And for the next couple of years, the thoughts were a lot less intense and easier to manage. But when I was 18, I started socializing again. I made some IRL friends, and these thoughts came back. I had these constant violent thoughts towards these people, and I also got very much into writing when I was 18, so these thoughts made it hard, of course, because I was trying to be productive. And when I was 19, the thoughts got really, really bad. Whenever I was in the street, I was just thinking about killing everyone. And I was really scared, very, very scared that I was going to lose control. I was going to this support group when I was 19 and also 20. And the leader of this support group was very nice to me, and he liked me a lot, and I could not stop thinking about punching him in the face, the whole time we were together, we would be talking and we would both be speaking kindly to each other. He would be smiling at me, I would smile back at him, and we would be having like a gentle conversation. And in the meantime, I was holding my hands in order to stop myself from punching him in the face, because I was at times almost just guessing what our conversation was about, because 95% of my mind was just in, I want to punch him in the face, don't do that, and then the 5% remaining was engaged in our conversation. And I eventually stopped going to this support group just because I was too scared it was actually going to happen. And after going to the support group, there was not much of a reason to continue leaving the house, especially considering that it was so stressful. So that was one of the main reasons I became a shut-in the first place. And throughout all the years that I was a shut-in, the intensity of my intrusive thoughts varied a lot. It went up, it went down, and up, it went down. But when I was 23, it got really, really bad, and it still is. What got really, really bad was the violent thoughts. I'll just start talking about how it is currently now, because it's been the same for the last year. One of the reasons I don't like leaving my room, one of the main reasons, is not just because I feel anxious being around my family, or not even just anxious, but I just feel very uncomfortable being around my family, even if it doesn't make me anxious. Is because I know that seeing my family means I'm going to have to visualize different ways of killing them. Every time I walk into the kitchen to make a tea, which is pretty much the only reason I go to the kitchen now. I like drinking tea a lot. I think I really need to get my own kettles and have a couple of jars of tea in my room, because this is actually quite unnecessary. But every time I go into the kitchen, the first thought I have is of killing whoever's in the kitchen. Then when I grab a heavy object, like I grab the kettle, well, my first thought is of striking someone in the head with the kettle. When I grab the glass, my first thought is of striking someone in the head with a glass. And the thought is so intense that pretty much every time my hands are shaking, because I'm trying so hard not to avoid the urge of striking someone with it. My sister bought a dog about a year ago, and my first thought was, how strong are my urges to kill this dog going to be? Every single time I think about a new person or seeing an old person, like whenever I think about trying to regain contact with people from the past, my first thought is, how hard is it going to be to resist killing them? One of the main things that puts me off the idea of being a parent is just the extreme amount of violent and sexual thoughts I would have to have towards my kids. And one of the main things that puts me off being in any kind of relationship or serious, be it romantic or be it a close friendship, is how much more painful it would be to have all these thoughts towards them. than it is to have these thoughts towards a family that sadly I'm not that close to. So, I think intrusive thoughts serve three main functions, and I pretty much already said this, but just to uh, put it to conclude, it's to make me unable to make an effort, unable to have intimacy, and unable to enjoy myself. It's pretty much my whole life. You know, some people have like good moments and bad moments, and I do too. There's some moments that are good, and kind of like there's some moments where I'm doing something and it's not that bad. Like maybe I'm watching an anime, and I'm thinking, oh, this is pretty good, and my body is not in a too bad state. I can kind of somewhat, I'm slightly able to plug into it, and it's very surprising whenever it does happen because it's so rare. And it happened, just recently for about 20 minutes. But the thing is, even when I am in my good moments, I can never quite fully enjoy it because there's always that layer, always, of compulsions that make it impossible for any enjoyment to ever be pure. So any enjoyment that I do have is always wrestling with these compulsions. So I've never really experienced true, pure enjoyment in my life. Because even when something does feel a little bit good, it always feels very just corrupt, and like I'm hanging. Like if I have a bit of enjoyment, I feel like I'm desperately holding on to it and trying to say, no, don't come in here, thoughts, don't come in. Let me let this continue for a bit more or something. And oh damn it! I think someone was calling me out. Some people take this. Okay. I think they've gone. Some people take this mask thing very, very seriously. Okay. Oh. Cool. I'm not sure if they were. I think they were actually calling their dog, but it sounded like they were calling me. It's happened to me a couple of times now that people call me out for not wearing the masks, so I'm pretty sensitive to anything that sounds like it. Working. In things that I like doing, I like writing a lot, but it's very, very hard to write because in order to write, you kind of have to be focused on what you're writing and not let anything else come in, but that's impossible for me. So writing is always, it's just a struggle to concentrate more than it is a struggle to find inspiration. Finding inspiration is not that hard for me. It's just the struggle to for that to be my central focus, and ideally to be my only focus. And intimacy, well, obviously, how can you be intimate with people if your number one thought towards them is always going to be killing them? Maybe I'm just closed-minded, but I haven't found the way to do that. And my whole life I've always wondered where these thoughts come from. Early in my life, I either just completely ignored the origin and just took them for what they were, like something magical or whatever, like kids do. Something completely irrational happens and you just take it as it is. Or I would give the most absurd supernatural explanations, like, God works in mysterious ways, so why wouldn't he want me to turn the light on and off a million times? I forgot to mention the most annoying of all intrusive thoughts, which is the fact that I often get a command, and then when I'm about to realize the command, it is cancelled. So then I retreat from the position, and the command is given to me again. So for example, I'm told, turn the light on. I walk towards the light switch, and as I'm about to turn it on, it says, no, stop. And then I retreat, and then once I've walked away, it says, now turn it on. So I walk up to the light switch, and when I'm about to press it, it says, no, stop. So I retreat, and then and then I give the same command again, and this can go on forever. And this happens pretty much every single day for years now. And it's not always with the light switch, but this pattern of being told to do something and told not to, and told to do it, and often there's two conflicting pseudo entities in my head, where one is telling me to do one thing, and it's telling me that you're going to be damned to hell if you don't do this, and then the other one is saying you will be damned to hell if you do this, and then I have to deduce which one is the real, which one of these two fake entities is the least fake one, which one did I create initially, which one was created initially spontaneously, and which one was just it's just there to combat the first one. So then, even when I do fulfill all the commands from one of the entities, I'm still going to feel really bad, because maybe that was the wrong one. I was saying, I've thought a lot about where these things come from, but I've never really reached a clear conclusion. But I have some theories, and one thing is I think it comes from a fear of fragility. When I was a very young child, one of the main things that disturbed me, maybe even the thing that disturbed me the most in the world, was the fact that other kids would kill insects. And this disturbed me so much, it was one of the main reasons why I had no interest in being friends with anyone. Because I thought, why would I want to have anything to do with other kids when they do something like that? And it was genuinely horrifying to me when I saw other kids doing this. And I was always extremely creeped out by insects. Not because I was grossed out by them, but because I was aware or I was very aware, as in I couldn't stop thinking about how uh, weak they were, how I could just touch one of these insects and that's it. I could just put my finger on top of an ant and press a little bit hard and that's it. And I would think about how this insect's one chance at being on Earth could just end at any moment, just from me walking around and suddenly stepping on it without me even knowing it. I thought, I'm such a weak being, or I feel like such a weak creature, but I have this immense power, and I can use it. And it's so great, this power, that I can exert it without even wanting to, just by mistake. And knowing that, and maybe things kind of got mixed up in my mind, and I started to think like that, not just about insects, but about everyone, because to a degree, it is true about everyone as well. It is, like, okay, it's hard to kill a human being by mistake, but it is extremely easy to kill or severely injure a human being. So maybe, in a way, the things that I felt towards insects when I was 5 are the same things that I feel now towards my mother, because it really is that easy. I just need half a second less of a sudden impulse. That comes from nowhere, just a lightning impulse, and I can hit her over the head with something really heavy, and bam, that's it, either dead or severely injured. So when I thought about how weak insects are, I would often visualize their bodies and visualize me stepping on them or twisting them. I would visualize me getting an ant and separating it in two. And I would do this just to think, because this is what I was afraid of. In the same way, if you're afraid of being hurt, say you're afraid of dogs, well, it's normal that you'll think about dogs. Well, if I'm afraid of hurting others, it's normal that I'm going to think about hurting others. Yeah. And I'm prone to thinking a lot about the things that I'm afraid of. I'm also extremely afraid whenever anyone does something slightly dangerous. For example, if my dad walks up a ladder, I can't stop thinking about him falling, and I visualize him hitting his head on the ground and blood going all over the place, or I visualize him breaking his hip, and my fantasies go very far. As in, I imagine the next 10 years of us living without our dad, and I imagine, what's this family going to be like once dad is dead, and what's he going to think in his last moments. And while I'm thinking about all these different things, we're just we might be casually talking or something, as he's just, almost dropped my phone, as he's just, doing some basic job around the house. And sometimes when I'm in a particularly sensitive mood, even just looking at someone walk can make me extremely afraid. Like I look at my mum walking, and I'm thinking, at any moment she could just fall. And she breaks her hip, and maybe she's going to be bedbound for the rest of her life. At this age, those things sometimes are never the same again, or never cure at all. Now, I imagine this hyper awareness of fragility comes from my general alienation from other people, because when you are socially integrated, you don't think about these things. Life is filled with these terrible, terrible things that we're only able to accept because there is a social rhythm that we plug into, and this rhythm includes both all of the trivialities of life that keep people together and becoming unconscious of all of the terrible things. And when you are not able to be socially integrated, I think you become you have shall we say a very cold and untempered awareness of uh, dangers. And another the reason where I think these thoughts could come from is really just as straightforward as effort is just not necessary in my life, and enjoyment, if I ever did experience pure enjoyment, it would probably be overwhelming because I'm very sensitive to positive emotions. They have a very strong effect on me that can sometimes be destructive. And, well, not sometimes, pretty much always, really. And intimacy has always been overall negative for me. So, because none of these things are necessary, because I live in a house where my needs are taken care of, I have uh, my my parents buy food, and I have I really don't have any obligations. So, of course, my body would look for a way to stop me from doing anything because there's no point. So it really could just be it, the body understands about hunger, it understands maybe a bit about boredom, but it doesn't understand about like existential needs, like fulfillment. So if I ever do try to do anything that is not necessary just because I want to be more fulfilled, well, it's normal that the body would be looking for ways to defend me from this. And why this particular way? Well, maybe it's just like one of many ways it could have been. Maybe it's because this is what on some level deep down I feel will happen if I do make an effort. That something terrible is going to happen. If I try to make a friend, that I'm not going to be able to handle the situation, and in the end something terrible is going to happen. So that's why I get these flashes of things that are close to me, but that are just so it's not really a fear of hurting my mother, but it's a fear of hurting someone at some point if I continue down this road. It's a fear that something bad is going to happen. You don't know what exactly, so you just take flashes from whatever is close to you. But at some point something's going to happen, something bad, if you try to pursue any kind of fulfillment or intensity, because it's unnecessary and it's overwhelming. another thing is, I guess there's a general lack of control over my own thoughts. I think control over your thoughts, as I sort of said before, comes from socialization, and without it, when you're a kid, it's kind of easy not to have insane thoughts, because you don't have that many insane things in your head, because you don't know enough about the world. But once you start knowing about the world, it's important to temper your thoughts, because if your thoughts are equally wild as an adult as they are as a kid, you'll go crazy. Because when you're an adult, the material is so much worse than when you're a kid. If you're a kid and your thoughts are crazy, well, you might think about some, well, what are your influences? Just like, if you've had a normal childhood, where it will be like movies for kids and games and things like that, so it's not that disturbing, no matter what you think. But so I would say just general immaturity is probably another reason. Immaturity and lack of control, as opposed to any general reason, but rather just a lack of development. Well, that's all I can think of at the moment. I've repeated myself a bit, and now I think there's a lot more to say about this, really, but that's enough at the moment. Thank you very much if you have watched this video. I can't really see how long it's been going on for, because I can't see the screen because of the sun. So I hope I haven't been holding it too badly. I came out pretty late today, at like 9 o'clock in the morning. I think this was too far. I'm going from one extreme to the other. Tomorrow the next time I come out, I'll try to do it at like 7 a.m. I think that's a good time. So it's not, so it's daytime, but there's at least still not too much light and just a few people. And okay, thank you if you have watched this video. Do tell me if you relate to anything in this video. That would be interesting. And see you in the next video. Goodbye.